All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me today to talk a little bit about roommate conflicts and the ways that you can be utilized as a resource. My name is Christina Hall Michelle. I am the I'm the assistant director. Sorry, just gave myself a title bump for the Sophomore Plus area here at Residential Life. I am originally from Lake Worth, Florida. I have many involvements on campus, most specifically my role within Residential Life. I'm a Maze mentor, and I also am a mentor for the Montserrat Dinner Club. If you see me around campus, you're always welcome to talk to me. I'm really passionate about racial justice. I'm currently in a doctoral program, so if you wanted to talk about grad school and next steps after you're done with your degree, I also welcome those types of conversations. So I'm going to allow my panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will start with some formal questions that we have created just to kind of illuminate what roommate conflicts look like and how you can use us in the halls.
How's it going, everyone? My name is Howard Thrasher. I am a resident director in our first year community in Duchesne Hall, the pride of the new campus. Thank you. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, and in my second year here at BC. And as far as my campus involvement, like Christina, I'm also a Maze mentor. It's a great program to get involved with. I also, too, have been working a little bit with the Learning to Learn program, and I'm just working with kind of helping bring first generation students on, acclimating them onto campus as well. And then I just, have obviously my role as a resident director here and just with my community in Duchesne. If you want to come talk to me about anything, I love sports. Obviously, we're not going to be having a lot this year, but still always around to talk about it. Especially I love to talk about the intersection of sports and social justice. And then come by and tell me your favorite movie, and I'll tell you why it's not good.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexandra Abreu. You can call me Alex. I am a resident director in the first year area as well. I'm also over on Newton campus. I'm in Keys Hall, so we can debate if Keys or Duchesne is superior, but Newton in general is a great place to be. I'm originally from Bristol, Rhode Island, so not too far from here. And besides for being an RD, I will be serving as an advisor for the Sexual Assault Network this upcoming year, which I'm really, really excited about. And I also work with Residence Hall Councils, which is a part of the larger umbrella of RHA, which is Residence Hall Association. So working on programming and we'll definitely be looking new and fresh and different this year, but going to be working hard to provide opportunities for students. If you see me around campus, please come say hi. I love music, so we can talk about music and what you enjoy listening to and give each other suggestions. And then also, like I said before, I'm very passionate about sexual violence prevention. And while I'm not in the counseling center, I'm not confidential, I still would very much love to have conversations, generally about the topic or just provide support or connection to other resources as best I can.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Soleimani and I'm the graduate resident director for Vandy 90. So I work closely with Christina all the time and she's awesome. So I'm originally from Suffern, New York, but now my parents reside in Somerset, Massachusetts. So I often go home to Somerset and I see my family in New York a lot. So very busy. And for my campus involvement, I'm very busy as a full-time graduate student. So this will be my second year in the higher education program here at Boston College. And my concentration is student affairs. If you see me around campus, I love to talk about education. I think that it's one of the best things that you can actually learn about. I actually was a graduate of Brandeis University and my major was education studies. And like I said before, education is a passion of mine, but also I love to talk about sports. I was a college athlete, so here to talk about that as well, even though it will be looking very different this year.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to introduce yourselves. I have the first formal question for all of you. What can a roommate conflict look like, or how can you identify when a conflict is happening?
Yeah, great. I think, with the roommate conflict, the first thing to think is that it's pretty obvious, just what a general conflict is, right? When you and a person just aren't getting along, you don't maybe share the same ideas about maybe the most simple things, like who gets up earliest in the morning. Like your roommate may want to get up at 5 a.m. and you may not want to get up till 10, right? You may have conflicts over, what you eat in the room. You may have conflicts over, who comes by the room. It's just, it's not super difficult to kind of see when you do have a conflict with the roommate, or when you do kind of aren't seeing eye to eye. And I think too that's why it's good to like recognize that maybe as soon as possible before it festers and boils over, to kind of see and understand that, like, even though there's a conflict between the two of us, or like, we don't agree on everything, that doesn't mean that we can't get along or we can't respect each other. But if you let these things continue to build up, that's when you start to lose that mutual respect between the two of each other. So I think that's what you kind of really need to understand first, is that like a conflict is not like a conflict is not an argument, it's not a disagreement, it's just a conflict.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Howard said. I think a lot of times roommate conflicts stem from a lack of communication between you and the other person. So sometimes, you can very actively see that happening. And then oftentimes I think it can be very, very passive too. People just kind of giving the other person a cold shoulder, pretending everything's fine when it's really not. So I think you can see, like, once that starts to happen, or you're feeling kind of that weird vibe of, this person's not talking to me as much as they used to, or we only really just say hi and that's it the whole day. That's when you might be able to tell something's going on there. And I think from what I've seen, and, from what I personally experienced too, I think a lot of it is misunderstandings or making assumptions of what the other person wants or likes or needs, and never actually having that conversation about what you actually think and want and what that other person actually thinks and wants.
Yeah, I echo all of the stuff that my panelists said, but I do want to highlight that within suite living, it's sometimes very difficult to have conversations with roommates, whereas Alex touched upon communication. A conflict can arise because of lack of communication, especially when you have a shared space where you might have guests coming in and out of, or just each other would like to hang out in the space. It can be sometimes harmful if you're not able to talk with one another and sort of talk through what you want the space to look like and what other people want the space to look like. It's important to really sit down and have those conversations and try to talk with one another before a major conflict arises.
Thank you. The next question is, what are some common missteps people take when trying to approach a roommate conflict?
I think a common misstep some people may take when approaching a roommate conflict is, instead of maybe, approaching their roommate early on about what the issue may be, they may get into a pattern of talking about it to other friends, talking about it to like their parents, talking about it to people and who are only going to see it from their side. And then that may build up more resentment and more frustration before they even bring the issue to the roommate themselves. So I think, you can go to, obviously there are people who are available to help you talk through how to approach a roommate conflict. Myself and the RAs are available, but don't spend a lot of this time, venting your frustrations, because that's not really what this is about, right? It's about more handling the conflict.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think the biggest misstep when approaching a conflict is not approaching the conflict, just ignoring it. Like Howard said, letting it fester, let those feelings grow without doing anything to address it. And I think the other part would be when people do, build up the courage to sit down and talk to their roommate or roommates, approaching it in a way that kind of attacks the other person versus the action or the thing that they're doing. And you could be completely right that your roommate is trashing the room, and that could all be totally valid. But instead of, saying like, you do this and you do that, and going at it at a different approach of like, hey, when this happens, this makes me feel, this type of way. I think when people go that route instead of the blaming kind of, it makes the other person more willing to be in the discussion, versus feeling like they're being attacked in that moment. Even though you could be very right about what's happening, I think the approach is huge in actually like coming to a conclusion and being able to move forward.
Yeah, and I think to sort of go off of that, I think a common misstep would be assuming that your roommate or roommates don't want to work on the situation, where Howard mentioned all of the resources that are available to help you. I think it's also important to note that people do want to get along. It's not healthy to live in conflict. So assuming that you immediately want to leave the space or that your roommate doesn't want to work on it can be a common misstep. I think to have an open mind and really talk about how you're feeling and how the situation is making you feel is helpful in the situation.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I think to clarify a little bit too, and I'm not sure who would like to speak, but could you talk a little bit more about like the role of texting in like roommate conflicts, or just even trying to determine like what your conflict style is? Like if you have any experience with figuring out what that is for you and what could be helpful for other folks to consider as they think about what could be on the horizon for them.
I'm actually thinking about back when I was in college and the roommate conflict that I had. And I think just based on my personality, I thought for a while that it would be so much easier to just text my roommate this versus actually sitting down face to face, because it can definitely be really scary to do that. Especially if, I was a first year student and on my own for the first time. I was scared to do that. But I actually met with someone who worked at my school in Res Life, and one thing that they suggested for me that now I suggest for students is, why don't you practice saying what you want to say with me first, so you can get like those fears out of the way. Maybe also give me the harsher version of it, so you're not immediately just like releasing that emotion in a text message or face to face. I always personally think face to face is much better than text. Things can get very misconstrued. But I'm more than willing, I'm sure the other RDs on this call too are happy to, talk to you and say like, yeah, say it all out to me first, get it out of your system, and then see how that made you feel, and we'll work on it from there. So then you feel confident and ready to have that conversation.
I would definitely recommend sitting down and talking with your roommate. There can be a lot of nonverbal cues that get lost over texting, and that can further exacerbate the situation. So like Alex said, if you have an awesome RD or an RA that would love to role play with you, I think that's really a good option to have. You can talk about how you're feeling without having your actual roommate in front of you. I think texting can be helpful to set up a time to meet with your roommate, but not fully have the conversation.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was going to add, was that, sometimes the only way to set up a conversation with your roommate is to text them. Also, too, you never want to just blindside them in the room with, hey, we're going to have this conversation now, right? So my recommendation to residents, if they are going to text, is have a prepared text to say something as simple as like, hey, I feel like there's some things we need to discuss as roommates. If you want to get together for lunch or dinner or something, and we can have that conversation over a meal, I think is always a better way to kind of like, make that conversation feel a little bit more comfortable and equal for both of them. But in doing that over text, I think might be an effective way for that.
I think as your moderator, I agree with everything they said. But the only other suggestion I would offer too is that if you're really anxious about the conversation, maybe offering to do it while you're walking could also help. Sometimes the more intimidating piece is like sitting across, looking eye to eye, and walking gives you something where you're actively doing something, but you also find yourself maybe a little freer to talk. So this kind of dives into our next question, and all of you had done a really brilliant job of alluding to this, but could you elaborate a little bit more about who is available in Res Life to talk about roommate relationships or conflicts in general?
Yeah, I think first off, who's available in Res Life or the resident directors and grad resident directors. We try to make ourselves available, and and as we kind of have our situation we're approaching this fall, we're still going to be available to meet with you all and to meet with your roommates to kind of have conversations about roommate relationships and just relationships in general on campus. But we're just one of the resources that I'm sure my colleagues here are going to elaborate on many more.
Yeah, I think reaching out to your RA is a great first step. There's a really good chance that as students here, they might have gone through a very similar experience. And if not, they're absolutely trained to know how to handle these types of situations. And that's why they signed up, to do the job, is because they want to help you through times like these. So absolutely recommend, once things maybe seem to be going south, reach out to your RA. They're a great resource for you.
Yeah, sort of building off RAs and RDs, your peers also have a lot of sort of experience and influence that you might not know about, and talking with a friend about how they handled a situation previously might be helpful. And then on another side, it might be nice to talk to an academic advisor or someone that you have a close relationship on campus. This could be someone that you meet in a different setting, and it might be academic, or it could be someone that you meet with within the Division of Student Affairs. I know they are all trained and have a lot of expertise on how to have difficult conversations. So that might be a good resource if you don't feel comfortable going to your RA. Someone else on campus would also be helpful.
Thank you. What tools, for example, like a roommate agreement or something else that you might think of, what tools exist for any resident to like talk about their expectations about their roommates? So if you could just elaborate a little bit on your own experience with those.
Yeah, so obviously there is the roommate agreement, which is essentially like it's a agreement between you and your roommate on kind of just simple standards for the room. So, hey, I like to get up early. You like to get up a little bit later. I like to study in the room. I like to study outside the room. Like how long do we have the lights on? How often do we play video games? It's an agreement so you both understand kind of what your own personal habits are when you're in the space and when you're in the room. And I think, we emphasize and have the RAs definitely try to emphasize with you, hey, take this very seriously, because it's not just an obligation that we need to have information on you. It's you two sitting down and learning things about each other, right? And a lot of those little conflicts that come up throughout the year are actually laid out, and they first are very much right there in the roommate agreement. So you can actually be actively thinking about it. So the roommate agreement, I think, is very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. And then I think also, if it gets to the point where you and your roommates try to talk things out and something seems to not be connecting, either the RA or the RD could host kind of like a mediation for you all, to sit down in a space where there's going to be someone there who makes sure that there's no name calling, everything is respectful and civil, and might just give you peace of mind knowing that, there's someone there who can keep things very calm. So that's always an option too, that RAs or the resident director would be happy to set up and help you all come to more like tangible outcomes of how you're going to move forward in your relationship with each other.
Yeah, I think my panelists really covered the bulk of what we can sort of offer here in residential life. But thinking back to tools that you have, I think it's really important to think about you as an undergraduate. What have you learned in your classes and how you speak with your peers and how you speak in class? I think those are transferable skills that you can use within a roommate conflict. So using I statements and talking about how you feel and not assuming how someone else feels. It's important that you voice your feelings, but also know that you have the tools to have that conversation and talk through the conflict. And you can use those tools either in a mediation, talking with your RAs, or even your resident director.
Nice. So this is the final question that we have today. What are situations that residents should be anticipating this fall and preparing conversations?
Yeah, I think, just with the current, situation involving COVID-19, I think just be ready to have conversations with your roommate about, one, just cleanliness of the space, and also two, just, how you're occupying the space in general. So that means, how often you're eating in the room. Are you properly disposing of trash? Are you properly disposing of your trash receptacles? So those are important questions to have. It's just like, how you all are sharing that space and trying to keep each other safe.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to be spending a lot of time in your living space. So thinking about how that shared space is going to work when it comes to maybe one of your classes is online, or a club that you typically meet in person is now meeting over Zoom. Be prepared to sit down with your roommates and say, okay, when are you all having these things? When am I having these things scheduled, so we can give each other the respect to, know like, okay, I need to be quiet or have my headphones in, so everyone can be able to still take part in everything that they're a part of on campus. And I'll also say FaceTime, I think, is something that I hear about a lot. People end up having conflicts because my roommate's always on FaceTime. There, I can hear it. So this is very just general, but maybe having headphones handy. And it doesn't have to be anything like fancy or anything like that, but just, having something that is in your room so you can just pop that right in. And I have a feeling that that'll definitely avoid a lot of conflict over noise in this upcoming semester.
Yeah, if I can emphasize anything, it would be to have headphones. I think that will definitely help situations where you might have class at the same time as your roommate, and how will you sort of work through the environment when you're both having class virtually. I think it's really important to set up a schedule with your roommate so everyone knows I have class at this time, I can't be disturbed. It will definitely help as you sort of navigate the COVID-19 reality this fall. Then I think it's also important to talk about your own personal feelings about hygiene. If you are someone that would like the room to be really clean, it's important that you express that up front and set up a chore chart or set up a cleaning chart so everyone is pitching in, and that you feel that your space is clean and that you're all, you feel safe in that space as well.
It's okay. I have one more thing to add that I just thought of. Also, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these other folks in this space, I think also taking time to sit down with yourself and thinking like, when are opportunities that I can step out in a way that's safe for both yourself and others. So maybe like discover, on Newton campus, we have a lot of paths back here in like the woodsy area. So maybe holding yourself accountable to like once a day, I'm going to go for a walk by myself with my mask on and my headphones, and just have that private time for me. So I can just not, have another person nearby and just like meditate or whatever it is that you like to do. I think that'll be really important too this upcoming year.
And I think if I have one more thing to add, if anyone minds, I think too, just finding a good balance between privacy and safety, because you are entitled to your privacy in your own alone time as well, but also remembering too that because of our COVID reality, like what you bring back to the room also affects the other people in your space. So being kind of like being very open or at least honest with your roommate, if like, you found yourself in an unsafe situation. So then establishing that boundary between privacy and safety.
Yeah, and if I could add anything, I would just say the willingness to be vulnerable. I think a lot has happened this summer just with the pandemic, a lot of current events, a lot of racial unrest. And I think if you can begin the semester and the year with just being candid about like, hey, this is what happened to me this summer, and like this is what I'm bringing into this space, and maybe even naming some intentions about like how you want this semester to be, and having an honest conversation of whether your roommate's holding you accountable or should just be aware. And then always being open and knowing those types of conversations are organic. So just because you have them once doesn't necessarily mean you can't ever reopen it. And I think also just knowing like how do you like to be approached? That might be helpful for someone to know, so that it eliminates a little bit more of the anxiety of like, how am I going to tell this person whatever might be on your mind. And so I want to thank everyone that's watching. I want to thank our wonderful panelists for their contributions. I think if there's one thing that you should remember, roommate conflicts are just a difficult conversation. And I think the secret about difficult conversations is that the more that you have them, it gets a little bit more comfortable for you to really engage in them, and they'll always be there no matter what stage of life you're at, whether you're undergrad, grad student, an adult. There might be an aspect of a difficult conversation, and so just remember that it will be okay, and that if as long as you put your best foot forward and ask for help, I think everything will work out exactly the way it should. So thank you everyone for joining us, and if you see us around, please say hi. Bye.